Joining me now is Dr. Brittney Cooper. She's a professor of Africana and Women's and Gender Studies at Rutgers University and the author of the book Eloquent Rage. Although you're not raging right now, Dr. Cooper, you're laughing because it's almost laughable that he said that. I just want to reread the one sentence there. I knew those people, those were people that loved this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. That's his distinction. Black Lives Matter people apparently don't love the country, they don't respect law enforcement, and they will break laws. White people won't. These people broke laws. We've had 400 arrests. We've got 300 arrests and another 100 coming, at least.
Look, we watched on January 6th as these people assaulted law enforcement officers, yanked their badges off, tased them, beat them in the head with all kinds of violent weapons. And so, but against the backdrop of Derek Chauvin's trial and the killing of George Floyd that's going on right now, it's really important that Ron Johnson was as explicit as he was. We have often wondered about how these interactions between Black people and the police happen. And this time he gave us something of the psychology of white people, that they inherently are primed to not see white people as a threat, even when they are violently attacking law enforcement, and that they are primed to see Black people just going about their day, let alone Black people who are protesting or standing up for their rights, as being violent and as being a threat. The thing that's shocking about Ron Johnson is that he's being so explicit and open about this, but the psychology is what we have witnessed over and over again in the country. And one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, why have white people become so emboldened in this moment to tell us straight out that they think that white people are always safe no matter what they're doing, and they think that Black people are always a threat even when we are exercising our right to peaceful protest?
Which is interesting, because last May and June I was involved in, I was covering a lot of those protests, and they were violent. I was attacked. I was actually injured, and it was by police. I didn't get attacked by anybody in the crowd. There was no violence in the crowd. I wonder whether a bunch of Black people violently attacking police with poles and sticks and beating them and climbing upon them, I wonder how that would turn out. Here's the question, Dr. Cooper. Ron Johnson wasn't the leader of the crazy pack in Congress. I wonder whether all of this extremism has given license to people who used to actually maybe think these things but not go on TV and say them. I'm a little surprised. I would have thought that on my inaugural edition of this episode, this segment, I'd be talking about Lauren Boebert or about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we certainly can. But Ron Johnson used to be a mainstream Republican.
Yeah, look. There are two things to say about that. One is that the modern GOP has abdicated its responsibility to govern. It doesn't even give any pretense of governing anymore. It is said to us very explicitly that it sees its role as the protection and maintenance of white power. Right? That is what it is designed to do. So you had GOP lawmakers coming out celebrating the stimulus on Twitter while not voting for it in Congress, right? So they're willing to let the Democrats govern while they use all of the political energy around Trump, around him raising money, around folks' anger about him losing the election to actually shore up white power structures. The second thing to say is that one of the things we're learning is that racism is not passive. Yes, it's a system that we're all born into, but white people actively participate in upholding systems of white supremacy. They govern in a way that upholds white supremacy. They vote in a way that upholds white supremacy. They pass voter suppression laws in ways that uphold white supremacy. And so Ron Johnson is part of a group of increasing group of GOP lawmakers who are trying to normalize a kind of combative racial discourse on the right. Right, to say that it's fine for white people to say these things, that it's that they're not going to bow down to the gods of political correctness anymore.
It doesn't have to be that way, though, Brittney. That's the interesting thing. Dr. Brittney Cooper, always appreciate your time. She's a professor of Africana and Women's Studies and Gender Studies at Rutgers University, the author of a book called Eloquent Rage, which is a must-read.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank all of you out there.
Thank you, as always.
Thanks to at home.
Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for letting us into your homes during these extraordinary times.